3 is fucking a 3 true creepy novels oral stories while I'm 7, but that goes since it's all. Like, the link to the video will be in the description below. Go and check them out. So let's into this fucking 3, 2, 1. Story number 1.
When my wife and I moved into our house in the summer of 2019, the
Yep.
neighbors on either side of us warned us about the people renting the house directly behind ours.
Yep.
Apparently, they had been known to cause trouble and blow things way out of proportion,
Really?
bordering on paranoia of everyone around them. We kept it in mind, but had no
Yeah.
issues for the first 6 months or so after moving in. Their house sits on a hill behind ours, and so
Yeah.
it overlooks the majority of our backyard due to the elevation change. Well, one night. Well, morning, technically.
Yeah.
At about 3 a.m., we wake up to ring notifications from our phones showing video from our front doorbell.
What?
There's a man standing barefoot in a sleeveless shirt on our
What?
porch, pounding on our front door. We give it 2 to 3
Why is he pointing on the door? In the middle of the night? What the?
minutes, just watching him on the app before doing anything. We were thinking maybe he was some random drunk guy and had the wrong
be.
house. Essentially, giving him the benefit of the doubt. But then we start to hear him say, "Come on out, you fucking pussy. I'm gonna fuck your ass up." He then
Oh.
leaves the porch and starts to head around the side
Oh,
of the
no, he
house
didn't.
towards our backyard. Considering we had no idea who this was, my wife immediately called the police. I quickly
Cool.
got out of our bedroom and headed towards the external doors to look and listen for any attempt at a home invasion. At this point, our neighbors directly behind us throw a huge spotlight into our backyard from theirs.
What?
We're thinking, okay, cool.
Okay.
They must know something's up, and
Yeah.
they're trying to help us out by shedding light on our backyard. The cops arrive several long minutes later and knock. We explain the situation, and they head out back to look around and get the
Yeah.
scoop from the neighbors with the spotlight. Well, it turned out that the spotlight neighbor was the one on our porch. He had jumped over our fence into our backyard and up into his yard and then threw the light on. He told the police that several nights prior, I had let my puppy out into my own backyard in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And because I was in my boxers, he thought that I was trying to expose myself to his family.
What?
Because they could look down on our entire yard from where theirs sits. He
Man.
then followed this up to the police with evidence, which consisted of videos he had taken through our windows of my wife and I inside of our home, doing totally normal things like chores, watching TV, etc.
Yeah.
Nothing inappropriate or out of the ordinary. Not that it would have mattered anyway. We were in our own home, minding our business. Because of the elevation difference, if they went out of their way, they could technically see through our closed blinds due to the angle. So they had been filming us for no reason at all and expected the police to see this as reasonable. The cops came back in
Yeah.
and my wife was devastated. This was a huge breach of our privacy, of course, and totally
Yep.
unfounded accusations,
Literally, yeah.
as we had never done anything to anger these people. For fuck's sake, we hadn't even met them. The police told us not to worry about it, that if he tries something again, just give them a call. I'm not gonna lie, this wasn't the most comforting thing to hear at the time. They moved out a few months later without any additional issues, and my wife and I celebrated like it was a holiday when we saw the moving van in their driveway. What a relief.
Wow. Wow. That was wow. Literally. Wow. And drop a like if you want to see more series reactions. Drop a like. So we know what to.
Creepy-ass neighbors? Oh, this is my moment to shine.
Yeah.
Sit back, grab a snack, and listen to this crazy-ass story. I'm
Crazy?
a female and was 30 years old at the time of this experience.
Yeah.
I lived in a multifamily home on the second floor in a pretty wealthy town. My downstairs neighbor has been there for 12 years or so. He was a quiet single man in his early 60s with a dog. The first year or two I lived there, I had no issues with him. He was rarely home and didn't
Yeah.
complain or cause any problems. During my third year living there, I started to notice a young girl was staying at his place quite often. She was maybe my age, and I could tell they weren't related. I had no problem with him having guests. That is, until
Yeah.
the intense arguments started happening. Constant yelling and fighting, furniture being knocked over, you name it. Then I noticed this
Wow.
girl was staying over even when my neighbor wasn't home, and she's having people come over as well. And they're also fighting, partying, and just being loud and obnoxious.
Yeah.
I was in law school, and the noise was not helping with my study schedule, so I was getting annoyed. One morning, I
A
heard
bit
an
too.
intense argument and doors slamming, so I looked out the window,
Yeah.
and one of the girl's guests was trying to break into the house. I guess she locked him out. She eventually let him in, and they left. Months went by of this weird shit going on downstairs, and I started to feel unsafe. I ended up installing cameras in my apartment and at the front door that I shared with my neighbor. The camera catches random men coming to the house at all hours of the day to see this girl.
Wow.
What the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I
What?
thought.
What is going on?
Sometimes my neighbor is home and sometimes he's not.
Yeah.
I thought she was selling drugs or something because my neighbor was clearly using her at this point. One day, I went to get the mail,
Literally.
and a court summons
Yeah.
arrived in her name. I looked her up and she had a long criminal history. A chill ran down my spine.
Wow.
The noise and sketchy shit continued until one day,
Yeah.
she just disappeared. For like 3 months, my life was back to normal. She eventually came back and things got worse. Come to find out she was in jail for prostitution.
What?
Well, great. Now it makes sense seeing all those random men visiting her earlier. I complained to my landlord enough times, and he finally told my neighbor that this girl was no longer allowed there. The cops got involved, and they basically banned the girl from the house. Well, the girl's gone, but
Cool.
the neighbor is still fucked up on drugs and just generally being a piece of shit. I came outside one morning to find a scratch on my car. We share a driveway, and shit happens, no big deal. I let it go until a week later, I heard a crash in the driveway. My neighbor slammed his car into mine and crushed the entire front end. I go outside to confront him. What the fuck is your problem,
Yeah.
old-timer?
What is your problem?
He was so fucked up on God knows what that he didn't even realize he hit my car. Oh my goodness, I'm just pissed off at this point and wanted to
Yeah.
scream at the top of my lungs. I called
That's
my
really
insurance
bad.
company and told them what happened. Well, guess what? On the same day, I came home from work and parked my already beat-up car in a different spot so that he wouldn't hit it again. At
Cool.
11 p.m. that night, he crashed into my car again,
What?
despite
Again?
me moving it, and completely totaled my car. I
Wow.
called the cops at this point because I had enough of this shit. He's so high on drugs and doesn't realize he hit my car both times. Nor does he come to tell me.
Wow.
He backed out of the driveway going like 30 miles per hour and didn't realize he smashed my car to pieces. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Okay. Well.
Anyway, I moved the fuck out of there the following week.
Cool.
His insurance paid for the damage done to my car. I hope he got some goddamn help because he was a total druggie.
Wow. Wow. No, that is messed up, you know. Wow. Number 3.
Me and my fiance rented a house that had another apartment in the basement.
Yeah.
The lady who lived below us kept to herself for the most part, so we didn't see her much. Part of our rental was a detached garage, and she asked if she could put a small, deep freezer in our garage. We were using it for storage, so we were fine with it. After a couple weeks of having her freezer in there, it somehow got unplugged. She came to us and wanted us to pay to replace everything. I understood her frustration, but we hardly ever went into the garage since it was only for storage. In other words, we definitely didn't unplug it, and our landlord agreed. But she was pissed. She had a son in college who came home for the summer. During that summer, he found a cat and brought it home. His mom said no cats were allowed inside, so he would feed the kitten outside.
Wow.
She was pretty wild.
Cookies.
He left for school again in the fall, and we noticed that the cat was getting very thin. We started feeding her outside in her usual spot. Around Christmas, we bought a bag of cat food, and I made a plate of cookies and left them both at our neighbor's front door. The next day, they were both back on our porch. Rude. Whatever. We continued to feed the cat because she obviously wasn't feeding her. A few weeks later, the cat came to our door crying. She was trying to come inside. It was super weird considering she was pretty wild and we had never let her inside before. I let her in and noticed she was pregnant and, for sure, about to have babies. I made her a little corner and she had babies the next day. We let her stay in the house with us, but we knew we couldn't keep her. I went downstairs to talk to our neighbor. She said that her son's cat was a boy, so the cat we had obviously wasn't his. I posted on Facebook to see if anyone was interested in fostering a cat and her kittens because we couldn't keep her. Her son saw my post on Facebook and got super mad at his mom. She then called the cops and said that I stole her cat and lied to her when she confronted me about having the cat in my possession.
What?
It was the stupidest, most frustrating thing that had ever happened to me, as far as neighbors go. The police called animal control, who then contacted us. They asked us to take the cat and her kittens to the shelter so that if our neighbor really wanted the cats, she would have to pay the fee as well as get her vaccinated and licensed.
Wow.
We did take them to the shelter, and as far as I know, she did pay the fees to pick her up. However, I did see her on the animal shelter's Facebook adoption page not long after that. Poor baby. For the record, I was heartbroken to have to take her to the shelter. I felt awful for moving her and her babies around like that. I am sure that she was so anxious and scared. We would have tried to keep her, but we were moving to a new place that same week. Hence the urgency to find her a foster home, and we weren't allowed to have pets. All the authorities involved thought that she was nuts, and I think they were also frustrated to have to deal with this stupid situation.
Yeah.
We had this creepy-ass neighbor who lived in the apartment right below my husband and I. It went from
So we know for
constant complaints to him calling the cops on us multiple times
What?
and leaving threatening messages on our
What?
car and front door. When we first moved in, he was upset with the landlord for renting above him.
Yeah.
He left plenty of unpleasant notes and interrupted quite a few times when we were talking to the landlord. When we moved in, we only had a mattress and no other furniture, but he kept calling the landlord, saying that we were moving furniture around at 2 a.m. and had our TV on full blast.
What?
After the 8th complaint in 2 months of us still moving around furniture and TV being too loud, we finally showed our apartment to the landlord. We literally didn't have a TV and still only had our mattress. No clue what this guy's problem was.
Yeah.
Then the neighbor started leaving notes on our car telling
Yeah, what is the neighbor's problem?
us to keep it down, and he even put in writing,
Yeah.
"There needs to be no noise after 10 p.m., or else I'll call the cops." We usually didn't even get home until after 11 p.m., and we were respectful to make sure we kept things down, because we knew that not everyone had our work schedule. So we tried keeping it down even more, and there were so many instances when we'd be eating dinner, or cuddling quietly, or even sleeping and he'd be banging on his ceiling, which was our floor. After a few months, he started calling the cops, and it got to the point where even the cops told him to stop calling about a noise complaint because it's a landlord issue, and every time they came, they never heard anything. The last time they showed up, I was asleep, and my husband ended up talking to them and explaining everything. They suggested that we file a harassment complaint. Then the cops showed up at the coffee shop I worked at the time and explained that they were getting almost nightly calls. And they suggested to me, too, that we should file a harassment complaint against the neighbor. Well, unfortunately, things got worse.
What?
Our neighbors started leaving threatening notes on our car and front door, and we kept hearing our doorknob jiggle.
What?
He claimed that he and a friend had sat outside our apartment for 2 hours and listened to all the
Meh.
noise we were making. He's a retired cop and said he will call in a few favors if we continue making noise. He knows where we park our car, so we better start parking it somewhere else, if we didn't want it to get damaged, etc. We kept the notes and made copies for the landlord and let him know that this was what we were dealing with, so we're just keeping him in the loop before shit started getting real.
Yeah.
AKA, we're tired of this, and if an old guy gets his shit rocked, then just know that it's been a long time coming. The last complaint was when he ran outside to the landlord screaming that something needed to be done about us, because he heard our bed squeak the night before, and how dare he rent to some crazy college kids who are partying and having sex all night. The landlord finally told him to fuck off and stop being a bitter old man. Then the neighbor took a total 180, and we found out that he had decided to sue the landlord and was moving. Suddenly, the neighbor kept offering us rides when one of us were walking. He stopped complaining and leaving notes, but our doorknob kept jiggling and turning at around midnight. And
Yeah.
whenever we would check on our door, we'd hear someone running down the hall as we'd approach our door.
What? Okay, that's really weird. Wow. So we know more about.
This is a real story that has absolutely traumatized me and my boyfriend. 2 years ago, I moved to the UK for university, as I always wanted to go there and get away from my parents as the situation at home was beginning to become too toxic for me. In the first year at uni, I moved into a student accommodation and met some really great people. It was a good year, without meeting my boyfriend, who I'm still with and just enjoying my time away from my family and discovering what independence really meant.
Yeah.
Anyway, as the second year came by, I decided with some friends to move into a house rented by student accommodations.
Yeah.
But at least we had our own house and
Yeah.
weren't restricted as much with noise and parties as living in a small shared flat like in the first year.
Yeah.
Also, for reference, I had a ground floor room, and my window gave into a very small backyard.
Wow,
I'd
cool.
go out there and smoke every day as I am a smoker. There would be
Yeah.
a very thin wooden door giving into the other side of the street, where you would put your bins and broken chairs and whatnot. The door could only be closed and locked from inside the backyard, but since it was an
Yeah.
old door, we had to attach some strings to keep it closed for good. I had neighbors on each side of the house, so we were surrounded by families and some other student accommodations. The neighbors on the right of us were 5 boys who looked way over the age of being in university.
Yeah.
They were strange, so to say. I met one of them outside of our house one day, because of a police intervention due to one of his flatmates attacking him, and the others with a kitchen knife and burning their kitchen down.
What?
I heard some screams, and so I went outside with my flatmates and saw one of them being covered in blood and cuts everywhere on his arm, and a wound
Wow.
on his head inflicted by a kitchen knife.
Wow.
Me and my flatmates didn't know what to do, so we offered him our help to clean himself and gave him an old t-shirt to change out of his bloody clothes.
Yeah.
We then saw the guy who hurt these flatmates being escorted out by the police and into a van, then driven off to be arrested. I don't know anything more about the story. The police didn't really tell us anything else. Anyway, the guy who we helped was quite weird. He said a lot of BS and kept trying to grab me and flirt with me.
What?
We noticed while helping him that he smoked quite a lot of marijuana, but just didn't really care at the moment, as we just wanted to make sure he was okay as we didn't know him. Then after some time had passed, I would go to uni and come back home and see him quite often in the street, and just never said a word to him again. But one day he came up to me in the street while I went to the corner store and started talking to me weirdly. I didn't feel comfortable at all with that for some reason, so I just didn't respond to him. He then just said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll
That's
just wait
okay.
in front of your house then, and we can talk further." Well, saying I was creeped out would be an understatement. I honestly just thought he
That's a little creepy.
was joking, so I bought my drink at the
Yeah.
shop and headed back to my street, and as I turned onto the street where my house was, I saw him with his flatmate sitting on my doorstep waiting for me. So I
What?
panicked and went back next to the corner shop and called my only guy flatmate to ask him to open the door and tell the guys to go away. But obviously, he wasn't home and no one else was either. So I literally just waited it out until they left 1 hour later,
Yeah.
and then sprinted back home and locked the front door. My front door had a glass panel on it where you would be able to kind of make out who was standing in front of it.
Yeah.
After this already pretty scary encounter, I just tried to avoid the guy, and mostly succeeded for a while. But then, one day, as I
One day.
went smoking in the backyard,
Yeah.
I noticed that the wooden door, which is always closed, was open,
What?
and the strings that we put there to keep it closed were cut off.
What?
For whatever reason, I didn't think anything of it, and just closed the door again and put a
Yeah.
new string on it, thinking it was one of my flatmates who took the bins out and just didn't tie it back.
Could be.
The weird neighbors would very often scream and yell and fight in their house,
Yeah.
and it would wake me and my flatmates up in the middle of the night. But we kinda got used to it after a while. But one evening, my
Yeah.
boyfriend slept over like he usually did. And he, who usually never ever wakes up because of a noise,
Yeah.
woke up in the middle of the night because of a bang and some whispering.
What?
I was sound asleep, so he very silently woke me up,
Yeah.
and we both just waited in the dark and listened for any other noises. Suddenly, we heard a loud bang noise coming from the wooden door. It was loud as fuck. The door just shot open and I heard some footsteps next to my window. I always had my window open because it would
Yeah.
get really warm inside, so we both just froze. Then we
Yeah.
heard the door handle leading to the backyard begin to shake softly,
What?
as if they were trying to get inside. Then
What?
they stopped and it was quiet.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had the curtains closed so they couldn't see us, but we
Yeah.
were ready to get dressed and get the fuck out of the room and lock them in if they came in from the window. Then we heard my window open, and
What?
was almost halfway open. One of the guys was saying something in a different language that we couldn't understand while trying to get in. My boyfriend and I just shot up out of the bed, took my
Yeah.
phone, and
Yeah.
put clothes on. Then we both ran out of the room and out of the house. I then called my flatmates and told them to lock themselves in their rooms.
Oh.
Then, luckily, the police arrived in less than 5 minutes, as the police department was only a couple of streets down from us.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything else after the police came because I think me and my boyfriend were in shock. They ended up catching one guy, but the other guy fled and was later found a few streets up, smoking weed. The
What?
police told us they went inside of their house and found a shitload of meth and heroin.
Wow.
They were just carrying a massive kitchen knife with them. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I
What
was
the?
so confused, as I've never done anything to offend, nor have I done anything
Yeah.
wrong to my
I'll be confused.
neighbors. So the idea of them breaking in with a kitchen
Yeah.
knife terrorized me and my boyfriend. And
Wow.
God knows what intentions they had.
Yeah.
The two guys ended up being arrested, and one of them was put in prison for 2 years for carrying a weapon with
Wow.
intent to harm.
Good.
I'm now still coping
Yeah.
with it, and finding it really tough to get over. To
Me
this
too.
day, I ask myself periodically, what if?
Yeah.
And
Wave.
what would have happened if? I now very often wake up because of the slightest noise and get horrible nightmares and
Yeah.
PTSD because of it. But hey, at
Me
least
too.
I'm still with my boyfriend and we are okay. We often
Yeah.
talk about it and it helps our peace of mind a lot.
Wow. Wow. That. Wow. 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 That was wow. Literally. Wow. 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 Holy wow. Wow. That was three creepy noble order series while I'm 7, but that got since so wow. The link to the video will be the description below. Go and check them out. And drop a like if you like. And comment on below if you want to see more reaction like this one. And subscribe if you're new. And click the bell to be notified when I upload. And what? Bye. Wow. That is myself. Yeah. Wow.